Welcome to Daddy's Podcast.
This is the Redefining Plastics Podcast. Welcome to the Redefining Plastics Podcast. My name's Justin Riney. I've got an old friend. Old is not the right way of saying it. I've got a friend that I've had for a long time in the industry, somebody that I've worked with extensively, and somebody that I find to be the best resin buyer that I've ever worked with. And I don't know if I've ever told you that directly, Susan Estes, but it's fact that
Thank you, Justin.
you just have a way about you where you can be tough, but then at the same time have great relationships with all of your suppliers. I think
Thank you.
you would say most of your suppliers would call you a friend, and that's tough to do. It's really tough to do, to be strong, stick up for what you want, and then still maintain relationships. But anyway, all of that to say, Susan Estes, welcome. I know we've been
Thank
working
you.
on this for a while, but why don't you tell people that don't know you who you are, what you do, what your background is, and maybe a little bit about how you got into plastics.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Like I said, I'm definitely nervous. Never done anything like this before,
You'll be
but
fine.
I do love what I do. I love talking about what we're doing. I believe in plastics. I think it's imperative to have the appropriate material selection for all the right reasons. So again, appreciate the opportunity to say some good things about plastics and put it out into the world. But I'm a packaging engineer by degree out of Michigan State University. I spent the first part of my career designing packaging for durable goods companies and secondary packaging for a couple CPG companies, and really transitioned out of my packaging development roles into project management opportunities, and then eventually into commodity management. And once I was in commodities, started in colorants, did some time in the steel industries and some wood and lumber commodities, and eventually ended up in plastics and really haven't looked back since then. Been in plastics specifically at various companies over about the last 15 years and just absolutely love what I do. I think it's brought together my passion for packaging. I think packaging drives a lot of resin grade development in the marketplace. So it feels like I can do all the things that I've ever been exposed to all at once. So it's honestly an honor to be participating in the plastics industry for about the last 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm currently in more of a recycling role. I work for a recycler today in the rigid plastics PET side of things. But throughout my career, I've been exposed to polyolefins, styrenics, and PET.
Yeah. And that's how we met. You were my boss once upon a time, and one of the best that I've ever had. And we still have a relationship now. And what has that been? 5 years now since we worked together, roughly?
Yeah, maybe even 6 yet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because 2019, I think, is when I
2019.
left. But yeah, it's crazy how winding all of our careers and lives are. Never thought I would be doing this. Did you ever anticipate me doing this when we were working together?
You're a very passionate guy, so I could definitely see you, spreading the word out there. Again, podcasts, I feel like you've grown significantly in the last couple of years, the exposure and the reach that you have, which has been exciting for me to watch, quite honestly.
Yeah. And a lot of that is thanks to you. You put some connections in place, and ever since then, that's kind of grown from there. So I guess
Love
we
that.
can say Redefining Plastics is thanks to Susan Estes.
Oh, well, dude, stop.
But yeah, there are a lot of different things I wanted to talk about today. So females in plastics. I had made a comment to somebody once that I was in a meeting about 2 years ago at my current company, and I was the only male in the room, which is not
Wow.
typical. That is very strange. But I still think we lack having females in specifically leadership roles within the plastics industry, or people that are really driving us. And I think we need that. We need the feminine touch to improve what we're doing and how we're communicating. And there are so many different reasons why.
Yeah, agreed.
From
And I
your
think-
perspective, why do you think that is?
I think in general, diversity in thought is critical. I
Yeah.
think if you're going to get into a room, if you look around and, everyone's got a similar background, looks the same, talks the same, you're probably not going to leave the room with what you hope to.
Mhm.
So I just think that diversity in thought, background, approach is critical, especially when you're trying to move the needle like we are here in plastics.
Yeah. Why do you think there aren't as many diverse people within the plastics industry? Just high level.
Yeah, and I think part of it could just be, linked toward just who is participating in STEM type,
Yeah.
disciplines. Obviously, if I think back to my college experience, I look left, I look right. I'm generally, the one female in that mix. But I think as we focus more and more on getting females into those disciplines, we're starting to see that shift. And I always gauge it when I go into a trade show or a conference. I look around and I just kind of compare the mix of individuals today versus 15 years ago when I went to my first petrochemical conference. And that's how I tend to see whether or not we're really making a difference and shifting.
Do you feel like we are
I
improving?
feel I feel like we are. I think certain commodities, I think certain suppliers are doing a little bit better about, their mix and diversity. But in general, I think we've moved somewhat, but I don't think it's been significant.
Yeah. And to be clear, I'm not talking DEI. I'm not talking like how do we
Yep.
benefit others over. I just want diverse viewpoints, and I want just a completely different perspective, because I think right now what we've done in the past is not going to get us to where we want to go, per your comment earlier of like when you walk into a room, you're not going to
Yep.
get out of it what you want. We're not going to improve how people view plastics if we just keep doing the same thing. And we need new thoughts and new approaches. So my main concern is, how do we draw more diversity into plastics? Diversity of thought, whatever, or however you want to look at it. What do you think?
Yeah. And again, I think a lot of it's exposure, it's visibility, it's, things like Women Breaking the Mold that Plastics News is highlighting, so that folks are seeing more and more, females in the industry. And I think there's mentorship programs and certain things that some companies are doing better than others as well. But again, I think it's just critical to give that exposure and visibility to folks that, hey, plastics isn't so technical that not everyone can do it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're in a market where we're adding value, we're adding convenience to products, we're making life easier for folks. And, females are the end users too. So in a perfect world, you'd want to have, your end user mix be part of who's developing these, opportunities. So I think we just need to continue to raise visibility. I think it starts with internships program in colleges, but I think we have to go even further. I think it's those STEM affiliations with larger companies at even elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, to educate folks. You don't have to think of plastics as something very complicated, but really just take it back to the basics and teach people about what it is. Show them what a car would look like if you took plastic out of it, for instance.
Yeah.
Show them that it's an integral part of their every single day. And I think that's how you reach a larger audience and get more people excited about it.
Show them what their gas bill would be if they didn't have plastics in their cars.
Exactly.
We go back to those boats that people were driving in the 70s and the 80s. But I think something that triggered in my brain the comment about more women in STEM. I think that's part of it. But at the same time, if you look at me, I don't have a STEM degree. I don't have a STEM background. And I've fallen into this industry too. But I was given opportunities because of the way that I am, and maybe because I am aggressive and this, that, or the other, which in many cases can be looked at as a negative for women in business. So it kind of shuts down that opportunity to even get into procurement. Because procurement, if you get into that, you can do just about anything. You become, if you're good at it, you have to become some sort of a subject matter expert in whatever you're doing. And the easiest way to do that is just hang around people that are smarter than you. And I'm assuming you're getting this same thunderstorm. I'm right now because you're just right up the road.
Yeah.
But, it's pretty loud. I don't know if you could hear it, but
I'm sort of in a dungeon. My office is like literally a closet in our house, so I can't hear it, but I can
So
hear it.
this is like the fifth house that you've lived in since
Yes.
I've known you. Yes.
I have
Just keep
a house
moving.
buying and a car buying problem. I'll admit it.
Well, yeah. You just like the newest and best. I think
I
that's what
do.
it comes down to.
I
And
do.
there's
I'm
nothing wrong
I'm a
with
consumer.
that. Yeah. Hey, we need more consumers in plastics.
Exactly.
People that, because your point about having a nice mix of like end users in our business, because then we can know how to communicate to the people that are actually making buying decisions. Because right now, I've been arguing forever that the plastics industry is really good at B2B sales, horrific when it comes to communicating with consumers. Like we are horrible at it. And I met with Simon Meshling last week, and he was talking about how even in his industry, experts kind of took a step back because they didn't want to get involved in the fight. And that void left a lot of room for misinformation to grow. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. So we kind of need to dig back in to those discussions. And we need people that think differently, that are making buying decisions to be a huge part of driving that. So I'm real big on we need more diversity, specifically more women, but diversity in general. I think we need more of.
Yeah, I agree.
But so we've had some experiences with some not so great leadership past that that we've run into, and
Of course.
I want to jump into a conversation about leadership and kind of what makes a good leader and what makes a bad leader. So let's start there. Let's start with what makes a bad leader, because I think if you look at the negative, you can really define the positive. So we've had a lot of experience working for a lot of different people. We don't need to talk about specific
Absolutely.
people.
Right. To be clear.
In your mind, what makes a bad leader?
For me, a bad leader is someone that you're hesitant to follow, hesitant to, really get behind and support. And I think there's something that gives you that sense, right? That you need to proceed with caution. And for me, that's kind of always been what's classified a poor leader. Because you have a trepidation to fully support, right? And I think if you're not fully behind what you're doing, you're probably not fulfilled at work. You're not doing your best work. You're not feeling heard. You're not seeing a clear path forward. And I think, those are things that become detrimental to your performance and to your overall happiness at work.
I think if you add on to that, you're afraid to divulge information to those people as well.
Yeah,
from my
there's
perspective.
less honesty. Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
There's less honesty because you're not sure you can trust what will happen with your honest opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that information might go and it might be used against you when in fact, you may just be sharing facts, and those facts don't necessarily fit the narrative that the leader wants, and then that becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So I've found in the past that several people that I've worked for, I had to manage the information that I gave them. I had to tell them only the positives, and sometimes don't even tell them the positives, because then they may run with something before it's completely done and blow up negotiations. So I just think that there's that back and forth communication that is huge and key, and the trust factor. I think you used the word trust, and I think that is huge, because to me, that makes a great leader. It's somebody that you can trust, somebody that knows where they're going. And even if they make a mistake, they'll be the first person to own it. They'll be the person to say, this is my team, my responsibility. I own it. And I think there's a huge deficit in business today of people willing to take responsibility from mistakes.
And I agree with you. And I think part of it even goes back to diversity. To your point, if you're obviously brought in for a reason, right? And you want to hope that part of that is because of your diversity and experience, thought, background, et cetera. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing your true opinion because of all of that history that you have, it probably feels like it's not as safe of a place to work as you'd like to. So I think that not being able to use your background also inhibits trust in a relationship between, an individual and their manager.
Yeah.
So I
I,
I think that drastically impacts, the success of the team.
the amount of times that I've seen leaders come into a role that don't have experience in whatever role that is that they happen to be leading. Let's say it could even be a CEO for a company that's never done R&D. But then for some reason that CEO feels like they need to influence how R&D is done when they don't even have any clue how it works, rather than relying on the people that you hired to lead those. And if you put the right people in place, you shouldn't need to get involved in that. That
I
shouldn't be
agree.
something that you do. And there's so many instances of people that I've seen come into an organization and try to put their stamp on it. Like, this
Yep.
is my organization now.
It's
And
my way.
then they start meddling in things that they don't understand.
Yeah. And
There's
to
nothing
your
more
point,
demotivating.
I agree. And to your point, it's the trust piece, but it's also the empowerment. When you're not empowered by your leader to, do what you were brought in to do, that's even worse for your team because
Yeah.
you're taking away their
I think
power.
the one thing that I can say about when we worked together is I was thrown into a role that had no definition, and that was perfectly fine by me. I like that.
Yep.
That
You're very
gets me
comfortable in the
excited.
grip.
I can build something here.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about working with you is you understood that I knew what I was doing in certain areas, and you just checked in. Say, how are you doing? Can I be helpful? Can I be supportive? What do you need to get things done? That is the best way to possibly lead people. I don't need to have weekly check-ins, because if people get to know me, they understand that if I have to constantly explain what I'm doing, I get very bored very quick.
Yep.
And then I'm like, I gotta go do something else. I got the wanderlust. You like the new car, the new house. I like the new job every couple.
Yeah. No, I'm a little bit guilty
good
of that
thing.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were fun to
yeah,
manage. Like you said, to your point, just obviously you should be I think a good leader tailors their management style to each employee, right? Like
Yes.
I brought you in because you were an expert in films when we worked together.
Mhm.
I was thrilled to not have to know and really understand unwind direction on films. I could leave that with you and know it was safe. And, I think to your point, though, someone who needs to know all the details and get in the nuance of your commodity strategy, that's just not, the level you were brought in at from my perspective. You were obviously capable.
Yeah.
I didn't need to micromanage you.
I think expressing the strategy up the chain makes perfect sense. I get that. Like, hey, let's put together a strategy presentation. Let's show you what I'm looking to do. Now let me do it. Or if you've got comments while we're going through that presentation and you want to maybe tailor and shift some direction, great. That's a good time to have that conversation. It shouldn't be 6 months in. You have no clue what's going on in the organization. Hey, this isn't the way you should negotiate this. You should do it this way. And I'm like, you don't have any experience in this space. You don't even know how these suppliers work. You don't know how many suppliers we could possibly have. What are we doing here? The amount of times that I've seen that drives me insane, which is one of the main reasons why I don't do procurement anymore, to be completely transparent, because I'm a go-getter. I like to, here's the plan. Everybody okay? All right, I'm going 1,000 miles an hour. Procurement people don't like that, in my experience. You were okay with that. You were the exception to the rules.
But you were also really great at getting key stakeholder buy-in. You could understand, where you needed to get the buy-in from operations and other functional groups and go. You understood that certain things needed to be done. You weren't maneuvering recklessly, so to speak.
Yeah.
But again, you were brought in.
Some people may disagree with that.
Well, they're not here, so.
Yeah. I always found that I was borderline reckless at all times, but I think it's what makes me good at what I do, because I can say what's on my mind without trepidation, without being scared of the reaction. Sometimes it's a bad thing, though. I've got to learn to tailor my message up the chain sometimes.
Yeah, but again, sometimes we've got to push the needle, right? If we don't
Yep.
pressure test something to see if it works, we'll never change. So I think
Yep.
sometimes you need folks on your team that put you into that more uncomfortable situation. But I had a mentor early on in my career that told me, I don't care how you do it because you and I have different styles, we're different people, et cetera. But I need you to get it done. And don't be afraid to fail was also something he said to me.
Yeah.
Because he's like, whatever you do, if you mess something up, I got your back. And that comfort level, that gave me confidence to try new things and figure out who I was as a procurement individual. And I think that's something that I've tried to carry on as I have, new teams and new individuals to mentor, because for me, that was so critical to who I became as a buyer.
So was that maybe one of your first leaders in
It
procurement?
was. Mhm.
It was your first?
It
Honestly,
was.
that first leader is so key when you get into a new industry or you
Yeah.
get into a new role within the current industry. Because I had similar experiences. Like I worked for a guy at Sunoco. I'll shout him out. He's not there anymore. It's Topan Group now, or whatever the heck it's
Oh,
called.
yeah.
But yeah, David Kipp. I worked there, and he was great at just saying, "Hey, we put you in this role because we need somebody that's going to be aggressive. We need somebody that goes and gets things done, but we need to make sure that we maintain relationships. Go do." And it's okay to ask questions. It's okay if you stub your toe. Let's just make sure that if we're making huge decisions, everybody's involved.
Right.
And I took that to heart, and I've worked like that ever since. And it seems like you also had a really good leader early on that
Absolutely.
mentored you and helped you get to the position that you're in right now. So maybe part of this is we just have really bad middle management in plastics, and it's driving out potential other thoughts and
Yeah.
other diverse backgrounds because they want to make everybody the same.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's possible. And also, when I reflect back on my early years in procurement, for about 18 months, I was really told to participate in meetings with commodities that weren't mine and just listen. Like, so at some point, it's kind of weird, right? You feel like you're in all these meetings, but you're not really participating. But what you're doing is, learning, the language that's used when you're talking about commodities. You're understanding, how to build relationships, et cetera. So I felt like for about 18 months of my career, I wasn't really adding value, but looking back, I was taking it all in. And I think some things that we don't do now is have the opportunity to really listen, grow, have a mentor, and understand the space that we're in. I think we're often thrown in and told to get, 5 to 7% savings in year one,
Yeah.
rather than really digging in and understanding what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah. Like we're lacking coaching early on
Yes.
and time. I think
Yep.
time is a commodity that we're really running short on because most people are
Yep.
running really lean right now. So you got
Absolutely.
half the people doing twice the work and they aren't able to take the time to have those meetings like you're talking about.
Yep.
Because one of the first things I don't know if you remember, the first thing I say to everybody that hires me is I'm not going to talk much first 6 months I'm here. I'm going to listen and I'm going to figure out what's going on. And once I figure out what's going on, then I'll start to interact. And and a lot of that comes back to early leaders that I had where like, we know that you know what you're talking about. You don't need to run every conversation that you're in. And so I really took that to heart. And I was like, okay, now I should just sit back and listen and learn rather than feel like I have to prove that I belong here. And I think that drives a lot of people away because that, hey, you got to hit first 5% year one.
Right.
That makes it so you kind of have to start hit the ground running and really
Immediately. Yep.
drive projects without learning what it is that the company does. Why is the company buying what they're buying? Who are the players that you need to be involved with? Who are those stakeholders that we talked about earlier that you got to sell? Because there's so much internal selling and procurement. It's like 90% of the job.
I was going to
And I
say,
don't
I
think
think there's
anybody
more internal
understands.
selling than
Yeah.
external for sure.
And I think because I say it a lot. The people that are really good at procurement should be really good at sales if they are given the opportunity, because they have learned over the years how to sell, and soft selling is entirely necessary because you have no authority in procurement. You have to convince everybody else to
Exactly.
go the direction that you want to go. Half the time you're asking people to change things, and change is hard for people. And if you can convince them to change it by explaining to them how it's going to make their lives better, you'd be a great salesperson, is usually the way I look at it.
And to your point, you're asking individuals to make changes that they're not being measured for. Their bonus isn't going to be
Exactly.
bigger because they helped you with their project, et cetera. So developing that credibility with all your stakeholders is critical. But again, to your point, when you're under pressure to deliver 5 to 7%, it's sometimes hard to stop and build those relationships. But long term, I do think that's how you develop the relationships you really need to.
It's the only way to succeed in those kind
I
of roles,
agree.
specifically in big corporations where you've got 50
Yeah.
plants that you're having to interact with, and you got to learn the regional leaders, the national leaders, all the way down to the local level. You got to learn all of these people. You got to understand what they want, what's driving them. And I think that's key. That's the only way to make any of this work.
I was going to say, but your strategy on listening those first 6 months, I think what you learn when you're listening is there's a lot of folks that you're going to engage with as a procurement person that don't know what they don't know. So the things they think they can have at the plant level, they could probably have those and, even more than that. Once someone actually takes the time to see where they're struggling and say, hey, we could do this, this, and this. We could have vendor manage this. We could have, supplier support here. Those are things they might not even know if there's, a procurement person that's not taking the time to be on the floor and see where they're struggling. And I do think that's where you could separate yourself by really listening. I think humans as a whole, I think in the pace we're living right now, sometimes we forget to listen.
I'd
I'm
say
guilty.
most people forget to listen. I think just look at my LinkedIn feed. The people that comment before they actually take in all the information. The amount of times that I see people comment on a post that's a link to something, and the comment is actually agreeing to whatever the article says, but they're bashing the link. I'm like, well, you obviously didn't take the time to read it, because everything you just said is exactly what that article said. And I understand we're busy, but at least take the time to understand if you're right. That hard. It really isn't that hard. But this time management is tough.
It is.
I'll tell you, I used to have a very nice setup where I didn't have to really worry. The kids were all taken care of. I was able to just work, probably to my detriment because I'm a bit of a workaholic. But now that I don't have that safety net and the amount of time that goes into shuttling kids around in the morning and trying to figure out who's picking them up, how are we going to do that in the middle of a busy job, I can only imagine like a single mother that doesn't have any support, but would be great in whatever role if they've got a bad manager that's just micromanaging where that person is all the time, how difficult that would be. And how hard it would be to be successful when really it doesn't matter where they're sitting or what they're doing. If they're good at what they do, they'll get the job done. To your point earlier, hey, you got a different style, get the job done. That's all that matters. And I think there's a lot of that. It was easier when it was like lockdown, COVID, everybody was at home. Now everybody's thinking, for some reason they think that people need to get back in the office because apparently they aren't being as productive, when all of the data I've seen says people were more productive when they were working from home. Yeah. So it's like this knee-jerk reaction to old school management styles that is just going to demoralize the heck out of your entire workforce. And there's no learning that happened. It's so frustrating to me.
Yeah.
It's like, So I worked for a company. I'm going to shout them out. So Trademark, they went 100% remote after COVID, and they even got rid of their headquarters because they saw that this is the right way to lead. This is the right way to run our business. And the people that work there are so much happier now. The people that are there are more productive because they don't have to come in every single day. They're saving an hour round trip every day driving to and from an office. And they do a really good job with Teams meetings, all hands, stuff like that. So you don't need that. You don't need a physical place to go into. Anyway, that was a complete aside, but it just popped into my head.
But I think there is a gratitude that goes with that, right? It feels like you're being given the opportunity to have an hour back in your day, which is huge.
Yeah.
Especially, now that I'm a parent, I see how important that is.
Yeah. Like with the age that our kids are, because our kids are around the same age. If I'm gone for a week, I feel like those kids are completely different when I come back. Like they've grown and they're talking differently. They've got different like phrases that they're using. And like, where did this come from? Like, how did this happen? And I'm not even been gone for 5 days and it's like you're a different person. So for a parent, it's huge to be able to be at home with kids, and the family piece of business used to be huge back when there were pensions and it's like you were loyal to that one company and you stayed there forever. That company became like family. And now it's just like family doesn't matter to a lot of big corporations and to bosses, because that's like a detriment to getting things done, being productive. When in fact, the only reason why I work, it's not money. I don't care about that. I work because I want to take care of my kids.
Agreed.
That's the only reason why I do any of this. And people just don't understand what motivates anymore. And there's just a huge lack in good leadership. And it frustrates me because there's so much unlocked potential in our workforce that if people were just, if they were empowered, like you used the word empowered earlier. If they were empowered, how much better this industry would be. And it frustrates the heck out of me. Any other comments on workforce and leadership?
No, I think you nailed it. I think we just need to continue to be better. I think we need to listen more. I think we need to be more considerate. I always used to believe that I was a very empathetic leader to the folks on my team that had children, but it's until you're actually a parent, you don't really know what those individuals need. So I think, again, the flexibility is important. You can get the job done in a lot of different ways. And I think as our industry grows, I hope to see more of that. To your point, I think we need to celebrate the companies that have figured out how to do the hybrid schedules and make it work. I do think the FaceTime's important.
I
don't just get on the phone calls, but get on the video calls, and then you can see the nuance and you can see individual spaces. I do think you grow relationships more when you can see the nonverbal.
Yeah, I'm always on video on every call that I'm on, and I'm like the only one. And then one day somebody pointed out that I'm like 75% of everybody's screen is just my
that's
face.
funny.
I don't think anybody needs that.
No.
But yeah, I think I wanted to transition to plastics in general, because when we got to know each other, we were both in virgin plastics. So just traditional polymers, polystyrene, polypropylene, polyethylene, flexible films, all that stuff. And we both transitioned over the last couple of years into more sustainable roles. So you are leading the purchasing for an organization that makes recycled products, and that's the primary focus. So I want to talk about the differences between procurement for each of those different businesses, like those types of businesses, because it's completely different, right? It's
completely different. It's night and day.
Yeah. So what I always find funny is they'll just like, well, that person bought PET in the past, they can handle recycled. Like, well, it's not even close to the same thing.
It's really not.
You got like
No.
3 suppliers that you deal with when you're buying virgin. It's all formula based. And then you go to buying PET, like rPET, and you're like, holy crap, there's so many different ways I could buy this. I can buy strapping grade, I can buy bottle grade, I can buy all this different stuff. I could buy this regrind, I could buy it as solid state pellets. Like there's so many different things that go into understanding how to manage recycled. But certain companies, I think, can't differentiate the two. Like they manage them the exact same way and they fail constantly. So what do you think the biggest differences are between procurement in a traditional virgin business versus the recycled focused business?
Yeah, I think the biggest, I can't say it was a surprise. Obviously, in my last role before where I am today, my team was responsible for fueling 2 recycling centers on the flexible film side of things. But I think the biggest change when you're really just focused in the recycled markets is how opportunistic those suppliers and those markets tend to be and how fragmented they are. It's really easy to manage relationships when you have 3 suppliers of polyethylene, like you said. Obviously, there's more than 3. Yeah, there's obviously more than 3 polyethylene suppliers that you're probably buying from if you're a large buyer. But, when I think of bale suppliers right now for me, it's like almost 300. So when you think of that tail in a traditional procurement environment, how do you manage that? How do you manage your, critical suppliers? How do you really, force rank some of these suppliers on quality and other metrics? And really, because of the nature of the recycled industry right now, you're surviving on razor thin margins. So you're running lean, yet you're managing a supply base of, hundreds of folks on your largest commodities. So for me, that's been the biggest challenge. I believe that, relationships matter. I think you need to invest in them. I think you need to understand what each party needs. But when you've got that many suppliers and it's a team of 2, you really can't, dedicate the amount of time that you're used to on building those relationships. So you have to learn to navigate those relationships differently. And for me, that's been the biggest challenge. It's incredibly fragmented. It doesn't feel like it's as loyal. I think that's starting to shift. I think as the market evolves and brand owners get more involved, the whole value chain is going to look different in 5 to 7 years. But right now, I still think we're in that evolution. It's almost like you're speaking a different language than virgin petrochemicals.
Yeah. And the brands, I think, are the most clueless out of all of the people involved in that marketplace. And they're well-intentioned, but they make things so much harder. They make it so much worse. And if they would just stay out of it and let people that understand these markets manage them, things would be way better. That's just not the way things operate. But
and
I think trust too is huge there. Go ahead.
Definitely. No, and I was going to say, I think the challenge is we need the brand owners because, I think they can provide a lot of the funding that's needed to launch some of these opportunities. But, again, if you're not taking the time to really understand the market fundamentals and what's driving the price, then you're always going to have a disconnect and you're going to continue to see recyclers and folks in the middle, go out of business because the economics just aren't there.
The amount of times that I have conversations with people are like, well, why can't we just sell more recycled content? Like, well, first off, brands aren't actually buying it because of multiple different reasons. Typically these days, the conversation I have is, well, inflation, none of our customers are going to pay for more.
Right.
And okay, but then all these guys are going to go bankrupt in the interim, and then we're going to be starting from scratch again when the market does turn, because the market will turn. It will get better, but nobody's going to be well positioned to take advantage of it because everybody's getting so lean to deal with the trough that we're in right now. It's just, it's a really tough space. So for my opinion on the biggest difference between virgin and recycled is picking winners, I think, is very hard. There's so much trust involved because if whoever you're buying your bales from, for example, if they're not good at sorting and there's like a 1% plus contaminant in there and you don't really know it at first, that will become a huge problem later on.
Yep.
But it's tough to find these things because you have to trust at times that what you're being told and what you're being sold is the same, and it all is going to work out. And it doesn't always work out because, as you know better than most, recycled content, the quality changes week to week because it completely is dependent on the inbound material. Like if you have source controlled stuff, that's great. It's at a facility, there's only one stream of material going in, that's all being collected right there. I can buy all that. I know exactly what I'm getting. But if you're getting it from MRF, who knows what the heck's in?
Right.
It's like,
and
you got to really trust that the people know what they're doing.
For sure. And you've got consumer patterns, you have seasonality, you have, a reduction in hand sorting when the market's at a low. So they're pulling people off, the line that would typically be pulling things out of the stream. So as the market moves down, you see worse quality, worse impact to your yields. And again, just the whole picture becomes, pretty dismal once all of that happens. So to your point, it's at least when you're buying a virgin pellet, you know what you're getting all day, every day. You're getting it from an ISO certified supplier. Recycling is it's different. It's art and science combined.
Yeah. Brands will always come to me like, I need a data sheet on this PCR stream. Like, no, I'm not going to do that because I am not going to stand by what somebody else is selling to me when I know it's going to have variance in it. I'm not going to tell you this stream is a certificate of analysis. This is exactly what it's going to be every single time. It's just not going to work like that. You have to have some variance in your process or the ability to vary your production process in order to take recycled content. And if you're this thin on your window for your operating tolerances, don't buy PCR.
Yeah.
Just that simple. If you don't have the ability to move, you're going to fail with PCR. So I think education of brands and customers and even internal stakeholders. So I work for a resin producer. Resin producers are not very good at the recycled content. We're really good at making virgin pellet. We're really good at that.
Yep.
People don't see the difference between the two things, and they could not be more diametrically opposed.
Yep,
it's like,
I agree.
I don't know how many times I have the same conversations. Like, these things are so different, and we're looking to manage them in the exact same way that we've always done. And it's so frustrating to sell internally on these things when because I've got this weird role where I'm kind of in procurement, kind of in sales, kind of in advocacy, kind of in like 50 other things.
That's
And
perfect.
so
Do you like a new
it's
role
I'm
every 2
doing
years?
all of
That's
these.
perfect.
I do. It's great. But it gets really frustrating when you're trying to express to people what is needed for success in this space. Because there are so many variables. And it's like every day is something different. Like, you could be expecting loads and then there's an unexpected shutdown at whatever facility that you're buying from. And they're like, whoa, how come you don't have any kind of backup? It's PCR.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? There's one company that has that one speck of that stream that when you blend it all together, you get to what you need. I don't have
that has the
options.
scale that you need. I think scale is
Exactly.
always a challenge too. Yeah.
Like, I can buy from 50 different people and then blend it and hope to get to the spec that you want. And then I'll have backup. But that doesn't seem like a very good idea. That's going to increase costs. And everybody's saying they don't want to pay for it.
Exactly.
So it's this weird place that we're in right now because everybody's talking, I want more sustainable products, but I'm not seeing the buying habits change yet. I don't know. What do you think about all that? I've been rambling now.
No, and I agree with you. And just going back to the data sheet, I've got, folks that I work with, oh, bring in this data sheet. And I always throw that flag. Yes, there's a data sheet, but what we really need to lean into is what's the demonstrated performance that we've been getting from this
Yes.
particular supplier on this stream over, a certain amount of time. Because there's a lot of data sheets out there. I guess maybe this is the caution to buyers, right? That, I've seen a lot of data sheets that are pretty irrelevant in the recycling space. So you just need to do your diligence up front, keep suppliers honest, et cetera, because there is a shift for all the things that we talked about, seasonality, swapping streams, maybe not letting you know, et cetera. So demonstrated performance is key. And I think the challenge also is, I always think of the triangle when you're specifying materials. The engineers and operations always wants what's at the top of the triangle. But at the end of the day, if all you bring in is the top of the triangle, you don't have enough material to fuel your plants. So learning how to be flexible and run all the stuff at the bottom of the triangle, I think is how these converters and recyclers are going to win. Because if you're not flexible, you're out of the game. Because at the end of the day, every day it's different. It's a different game every day, really.
And it's such a long supply chain too.
Yes.
So you have to almost buy these things well in advance of when you're actually going to need it for production. And you almost have to sit on inventory more than a lot of companies are comfortable with because of the variation in the inbound streams, variation in production quantities and quality.
Yeah.
So you really have to be able to adjust on the fly. And you have to take some risk. If you're going to be a player in recycled content, you have to have some tolerance for risk because you're going to have to buy material without knowing if you're going to have a home for it.
Yeah.
And the market changes quickly. I know we're not tied to any kind of index, but that index does kind of drive buying behavior because where markets are now for virgin is so low that it's very difficult to sell PCR.
And Justin, I think both of us have worked for converters and brand owners enough in the past to know that oftentimes when the market is where it is now, you see sustainability goals kind of take a backseat to profitability. And I think that's always a wild card or a risk.
There's just a lot of brands that are talking big. They're doing the PR side of sustainability, but they're not actually buying. And it's driving a lot of investment in recycling, which is good. But if there's no end market, what's the point? Like, why are we doing all of this if nobody's going to buy it in the end? Like, there's always going to be industrial, like post-industrial streams, I think are always going to have a home because they're typically cheaper, even cheaper than you can buy wide spec right now if you get the right streams. The PCR content, because it has so many hands that it has to go through, and it gets so much more expensive, that's where I think we're going to have problems of every time we have a market trough like this, how many people go bankrupt? A ton of recyclers go bankrupt. And if we don't have somebody that's guaranteeing that they're going to buy it in the trough, we're never going to grow this space. So brands are going to have to step up and say, we're going to buy it no matter what. It's going to make our products a little more expensive. Maybe we're going to have to eat some margin. But if they truly want to be sustainable, they can do it. They just have to actually pony up when it comes down to it. And I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, I think some out there are doing a little bit better than others. But to your point, Justin, recyclers going out of business doesn't really help anyone because those companies and those converters on the value chain have invested dollars and time to get those qualifications in place. And now they're starting over too.
Yeah.
So they've lost
and
time.
How many other people are going to invest hard-earned capital into the recycling space when all they have to do is look at a 20-year window of the market and see all the different names that come and go? I don't think there are a whole lot of people that are really excited about investing in recycled in like a MRF or a PERF or anything like that because of just how difficult it is for a lot of these companies to stay afloat when the market gets down like it is right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people use this as like the negative of like plastics recycling in general, but this isn't just a plastics problem. Like the amount of paper mills that I've seen that have gone that have been shuttered because there are more efficient plants out there, or there's just not as much demand right now. This is not just plastics. This is recycling as a whole, sustainable products. But anyway, you were going to say something. I talked over you.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I do that all the time. It's like, it probably wasn't going to be that interesting, whatever I was about to say, because typically it's not. But yeah, I think there are solutions to all of these things. I don't want to make it seem like it's all doom and gloom, because I think there are people out there that really want to make a difference. I think you're one of them. I think there are people all over the place, like the Brave guys, Direct Polymers. There's so many people that are out there that are well-intentioned, that want to make a difference. And I think if we empower those people, we can solve a lot of these. But we really need the brands to come through. And I don't think any of this works if consumer-facing brands don't buy PCR. I go on all the time talking about, I don't think there should be a difference between post-consumer and post-industrial. It should all be looked at as recycled content, in my mind. I don't see I understand why people look at it that way, but only 7% of recycled content comes from curbside. That's just nationally. And so when you look at it, I think the reason why people look at post-consumer is because they assume that the post-consumer means it went through curbside, when in fact, most of the time that post-consumer that they're buying did not go through curbside. There's a lot of reasons for that, because single stream, everybody dumps everything into one bin. It's a dirty process. You're not going to get very clean material on the outside. It's not ideal for you in your production. It's not ideal for anybody. And so, and that includes paper, glass, everything. I'm talking just recycling as a whole. Curbside is not as important as I think a lot of people make it out to be. I think we need to increase it, and we need to do more of it. That's great. Let's do more of it. Folks like TRP are out there trying to make it better. Recycled content should be recycled content. Are we diverting material from the landfill?
I agree.
I think if we can do that, if we can look at it that way, I think we solve for a lot of problems in recycling. Because people are able to like blend all this stuff together and reduce their overall costs, and then sell it into markets that make sense. What do you think?
I agree with you. And I think sometimes we focus on post-consumer because it's more tangible. I think because people put it in their, single bin at the end of the day, they understand it coming out of there, going into new things and, being into the world again. But I think the post-industrial piece is critical. But separating out recycled content, PI versus PC, again, I think it's maybe making things even more complicated for consumers to understand. But at the end of the day, I agree with you. We should be putting the right materials, post-industrial or post-consumer, into the right applications. And if it's ending up outside of a landfill, that's the win.
Yeah. So I think if we were really being honest, post-consumer going back into packaging, probably not the best outlet for that. What makes more sense is taking that post-consumer and selling it into an industrial application, but then cost becomes prohibitive because you got so many different hands that post-consumer's gone through.
Yep.
And I think we just need to focus on, let's get as much recycled content of any sort into all of our packages. That should be the goal. 100% diversion from landfill should be the goal. And right now it's not. And right now I think we're incentivizing the wrong thing. And I'm very willing to have debates with people that think I'm wrong, and that's fine. But this is just my experience and what I'm seeing and why I think we're failing to grow recycling right now.
And I tend to agree with you. I think sometimes, we're trying to have a particular story or to meet a particular narrative to show consumers how we're moving the needle. But there's so many different ways to skin that cat to make sure that this material is ending up outside of a landfill.
Yeah. And I'm, to be clear, I want more post-consumer recycled content. That doesn't mean I want to say, hey, let's just give up on curbside collection. No, let's expand that. Let's keep growing that. But let's find a way to incorporate cheaper recycled content like PIR in with the post-consumer to cost average it down to make it make sense from a financial perspective. And then you can sell it to brands, because then the brands can't say, well, I can't pay more because of inflation. Like, no, I can sell it for virgin or less. Now, what's your argument?
Exactly. And I think if you've got more PI in the stream, you're probably cleaning things up for some of those converters too, because PI tends to
Exactly.
obviously be cleaner. So it could be a
Yeah.
win-win. But again, we have to
Yeah.
think of it and approach it differently.
We got to think outside the box. We got to stop
Absolutely.
with this all-encompassing focus on the only recycled content that matters is post-consumer. Like, okay, why? I want to understand. I want somebody to sit down and explain to me why that's more important than any other recycling that's happening in this country or globally. And
Right.
so far, nobody's been able to explain it to me. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, and somebody needs to come along and educate me, which is fine. I'll admit it. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So if somebody has an idea, anybody that's listening to this, if you think this guy is such an idiot, he has no clue, please reach out to me and have a conversation. Maybe
Let's
don't
talk.
start off with, hey, this guy's such an idiot. Like, let's have a decent conversation. But I'd want to understand why there's this all-encompassing focus on just PCR, because I just think it's counterproductive and it's not helping anything. But anyway, I'm off my soapbox. I get on my soapbox quite a bit.
Okay, you're very
Maybe I
passionate.
should
It
cut
happens.
back. I know I should get off my soapbox a little bit more. Let you talk more. I have you on the show and then I talk the whole time.
No, I've done my share of talking.
We're almost at an hour. See? You see how quickly that goes?
It actually did go by really quickly.
Yeah. So
And I feel fired up. I feel excited. So that's good.
so perfect. So typically the way that I do this is I start off with this question. I've been really bad the last 2 episodes now. What do you think of when you hear the word plastic? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Opportunity.
I love that. I think that's a first. 'Cause there is a ton of opportunity. A way to
There
make
is.
things better. There's so many different things.
And for me, I think the reason why, Justin, throughout my career, I've worked at all types of different companies, but I've worked at a company that extended the shelf life of food packaging. And that allowed, children and families in remote regions in Africa to get food because the shelf life was longer than it ever had been in the past. That's meaningful to me. I worked at a company where they make trays out of polystyrene and PET that medium is put into and, small vaccines are made on. So again, children are getting cancer vaccines that potentially couldn't have before that. So I see plastics as an opportunity to change the world and change the way we do things and make things better for people.
Yeah. We've got our problems, but I think overall, it's a pretty awesome product when you look at it just holistically.
I wish
So
we'd talk
typically
more
what
about those wins, the good things that plastics are doing.
That's what I try to do. But we need more people to do it. I think
Agreed.
that's key. We need more louder voices that are well educated on the subjects to step up and have these kind of conversations. Because in a vacuum, the loudest voice is going to win. Well, a vacuum you wouldn't hear because there's no oxygen. You get what I'm saying.
I do.
When there's a gap, there's a power gap. Whoever's the loudest is gonna win hearts and minds, and that's what's happening right now. And we're gonna keep losing volume, market share. Recyclers are gonna keep going bankrupt if we do not solve for some of these big issues. And we have to be honest with ourselves and with others about the problems first, or we're never going to get anywhere. So I always give every guest an opportunity to speak about whatever's on their mind, whatever you got going on that you really want the world to know about. And if there's nothing, that's also fine. It's just whatever's on your mind.
I think, again, just excited to be here. This is my first podcast, was very, very nervous about it, but it felt good to just have an honest discussion with you. So thanks for the opportunity. On my mind, continues to be just the markets in general. What's going to happen with tariffs, what's going to happen, how, how is that going to impact supply chains? What's going on with freight? Obviously, anytime you're in a sourcing or supply chain role, I think these are the things that always keep you up at night. But obviously, there's a lot of things in the air right now for folks in sourcing, supply chain, plastics, commodities, et cetera. So I think we all just need to be patient, do more listening, and see what tomorrow brings.
Yes, I love that because people think procurement is cost savings, cost savings, cost savings, cost savings, cost savings. That's it.
Yep.
Really, no amount of cost savings that you make will ever make up for running a plant out once.
I agree.
So supply assurance is really number one. But
And risk
nobody's
mitigation
ever,
management. Yeah.
you're never bonused on that though. There's
Yep.
no way for that to be quantified. Did you run me out of material? Yes or no? That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that is the number one thing of running a business. And you can save yourself to death if you don't have the right partners, because you can save
Yeah.
a ton of money. But the first time that they don't perform, you're out of a job pretty
And
quickly.
I would pretty much guarantee that folks won't remember how much you saved in year 1, 2, 3, but they will remember if you shut a plant down.
Oh yeah. And
I
they
pretty
will
much
hold that
guarantee
against
that
you for the
anywhere I've
rest of
ever
your
worked.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
was lucky enough to always find solutions to everything. I never ran a single plant out once.
There's a sense
That
of
is
pride
by
with
the
that, right?
grace of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the grace of God, though. That not necessarily anything I did. Just got lucky because it happens to everybody. Eventually, that's going to happen. So if I go back in procurement, like the first week that I'm there, I guarantee
You're due. You're due for an
somebody at
outage.
a point. Yeah.
And
Anyway, Susan, it is always fun talking to you. It's always good seeing you. We
likewise.
ran into each other at PRC and we were both running opposite directions. We
I
didn't
know,
really
it was
get a chance
awesome
to
though.
talk. You live right up the road here and we never see each other. That makes me sad. So we
Makes
need
me
to
sad
solve
too.
that problem here pretty soon. We'll get the families together. But yeah, it's good seeing you. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank
And
you. Thanks
if
for thinking of me.
anybody, if anybody needs to know more about PET recycling or just wants to get to know Susan, I'll put Susan's information in the show notes, and she's an excellent resource. So
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you
And
so much,
for
Justin.
Susan, this has been Redefining Plastics. If you want to learn more about the plastics industry, recycling, check out these other videos. Please like and subscribe.